What really happened to Maura Murray? It's been over 2 decades since her mysterious disappearance, and the questions still far outweigh any answers. Well, in this psychic energy reading, I tuned into the energetic trail left behind by Maura. Was it a planned escape? Was there foul play involved? Or is the answer far, far stranger than anything that we could perhaps imagine? Because this is one of the wildest energy readings I myself have conducted. So let's find out. I'm Faye, and I am a psychic, an intuitive, a medium, and an energy reader. And my special sauce, if you will, is post-cognitive energy reading, in which I can decode and then share the energetic imprints of events that have already previously occurred. That is very much the case of what I used when looking into Maura Murray's energy. However, before I share with you what I had discovered, I'm going to start by laying the groundwork in who she was, as well as what she had done leading up to her disappearance. So here we go. Maura Murray, who was born on May 4th, 1982, is an American woman who disappeared on the evening of February 9th, 2004, after a car crash on Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire. On the afternoon that Maura disappeared, she had emailed a work supervisor of the nursing school faculty that she would be out of town for a week due to a death in her family, and she would contact them once she returned back to campus. However, interestingly enough, her family indicated that there had in fact been no death in the family. Now, that same afternoon, she had also emailed her boyfriend. She had left him a voicemail. She had also made phone calls where she had looked into booking hotels in Vermont, as well as booking a condo that her family had on occasion vacationed in. Now, she had also packed her clothing, her toiletries, college textbooks, as well as her birth control into her car. And when her room was later searched, campus police discovered that most of her belongings had been packed up in boxes, and even the artwork had been taken down off of the walls. At 3:30 p.m., she had driven off campus, and at 3:40 p.m., she had withdrawn $280 from an ATM. Closed caption footage had shown when withdrawing the money she was alone, and she was also alone when she had stopped in at a nearby liquor store a short time later, in which she had purchased nearly $40 worth of alcoholic beverages. She is then believed to have left Amherst between 4 and 5 p.m., presumably via Interstate 91 North. She had called to check in her voicemail at 4:37 p.m., which was the last recorded use of her cell phone. To date, there is no indication that she had informed anyone of her destination or any evidence that she had in fact chosen one. Now, let's explore what had occurred the last time she was in fact seen after the car accident. So sometime after 7 p.m., a Woodsville, New Hampshire resident heard a loud thump outside of her house. Through her window, she could see a car up against the snowbank along New Hampshire Road 112. The resident telephoned the sheriff's department at 7:27 p.m. to report the accident. A passing motorist who lived nearby had stopped at the scene. He saw the car as well as a young woman walking around the vehicle. The driver noticed the young woman was not bleeding, nor did she have any visible injuries. However, she was cold and shivering. He had offered to call for help, but the woman asked him not to call the police, as she had assured him she had already called AAA. But AAA has no record of any call having been made to them. Now, the passing motorist who lived there and had known that there was no cell reception in the area, once he had arrived home, he had actually called the police. The sheriff's department logged the call at 7:43 p.m. Another local resident was driving home from work, and she claims to have passed the scene around 7:37 p.m., at which time she had seen a police SUV parked face-to-face with Murray's car. She pulled over briefly and did not see anyone inside or outside either vehicle and had decided to continue driving home. Now, interestingly enough, the witness statements contradict the official police log, which had said that the police arrived 9 minutes later, as in at 7:48 p.m. So ostensibly, she had disappeared somewhere between 7:27 p.m. and 7:48 p.m., although there was a police car that was claimed to have been seen there at 7:37 p.m., although the logs in the police station say that there was no such police that were there at that time. Now, you might want to keep this in mind when we get into the energy reading. So according to the official police log, at 7:46 p.m., a police officer arrived at the scene. However, the driver of the car had disappeared from the scene of the car accident. No one was found to be either inside or around the car. The car had impacted a tree on the driver's side of the vehicle, severely damaging the left headlight and pushing the car's radiator into the fan, rendering the car non-operatable. The car's windshield was cracked on the driver's side, and both airbags had also been deployed. Inside, as well as outside the car, the officer discovered red stains that looked to be red wine. And inside the car, he had found an empty beer bottle. In addition, on the interior of the car, it was discovered there was a AAA card issued to Maura Murray, gloves, compact music discs, makeup, as well as diamond jewelry, not the kind of thing that somebody would willingly leave behind, one could say, as well as driving directions to Burlington, Moira's favorite stuffed animal, and not without peril, a book about mountain climbing in the White Mountains. So an interesting accumulation of goods were discovered in the car. What, however, was not discovered in the car were credit cards, debit cards, a cell phone, none which have ever been located or used since Maura Murray's disappearance. Police also reported that some of the bottles of alcohol that were purchased were also discovered to have been missing. Now, police initially had treated her as a missing person on the belief that she may have wanted to disappear voluntarily. Now, this speculation is based in part on her travel preparations, about which she had confided nothing to friends nor family, and no obvious evidence of foul play. A voicemail was left on her father Fred's home answering machine at 3:20 p.m. stating that her car had been found abandoned. Fred was working out of state and did not receive the call. At 5 p.m., one of Murray's older sisters contacted her father to tell him of the situation, at which time Fred had contacted the police and was told that if Murray was not reported safe by the following morning, they could commence a search for her. At 5:17 p.m., Murray was first referred to as missing by the police department. Moira's father, Fred, had arrived on the morning of February 11th, and they had begun a search. A tracking dog tracked the scent from one of Murray's gloves 100 yards east from where the vehicle had been discovered, but completely lost the scent. This seemed to suggest to the police that she had left the area in another person's car. The FBI joined the investigation 10 days after Moira's disappearance. And at that time, a second search was conducted using a helicopter with thermal imaging camera, as well as tracking dogs and cadaver dogs. However, the search was fruitless as Moira's remains were not found. Since then, there have been very many subsequent searches in an effort to find Maura Murray. But those two were fruitless as, again, she has never been found. Now that concludes the information share into the disappearance of Maura Murray. Now let's get to the goods that the guides have brought and my own post-cognitive energy reading to explore what I think may have in fact happened to Maura Murray. So here we go. Energy reading into Maura Murray. Well, there in fact is no energetic resonance to the name Maura Murray. In fact, there is absolutely nothing at all. Now, well, as a viewer of my content, that might not seem to be unusual. I assure you, to me, it in fact is. Because as an energy reader, the way that I can connect to somebody's energy and thus then read it is through their name. So it's essentially as if I'm a police officer, I just pulled somebody over and I need to see their ID to make sure that when I'm issuing a ticket, it's in fact to the driver of the car. So my way of connecting to a person's energy is with their name, as that is, if you will, the energetic anchor that tethers their energy to the earthly domain, or even on the other side when, yes, I can still connect to somebody's energy. So the fact that when I was looking into the name Maura Murray, and there is absolutely no energetic resonance connected to the name, it's really unusual. And it's unusual because I can always pick up on something based on a person's name, because there is in fact something that is always left behind, like an energetic fingerprint, or imagine, if you will, crumbs after somebody has eaten a cupcake. And if the person is on the other side, as in they have already crossed over, so even whether or not the soul wants to come in and talk to me, an energetic resonance of that soul still exists. And that's what makes the lack of an energetic resonance connected to the name Maura Murray even more peculiar. Because with her name, there's nothing. So essentially all that exists connected to the name Maura Murray is what I was able to find on the internet. But on an energetic level, it's like the history and the name has energetically been whitewashed to dissolve any identifiable markers of the person that was connected to that name off of the name. So in case you're wondering if I think that Maura Murray in fact has crossed over, the answer is no, because again, whether somebody is alive and on this side or they've crossed over and on the other side, there is always still an energetic resonance that is left behind by them. So I do not believe that she has crossed over, because had she in fact been on the other side, I could still find her. But because her energy isn't on the other side, there is, so to say, a dead end that is associated with her name in the 3D material world. So this fact alone leads me to believe that the person with the name Maura Murray does not know that she ever once was Maura Murray, as in her memory has been wiped. But here's a useful thing about being an energy reader. As the expression goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so too, as an energy reader, there's more than one way to actually read energy. So there's the connecting to the person's name, but there's also the post-cognitive energy reading, which I had next decided to try to see if I could establish what in fact had become of Maura Murray. Because here's the thing, even though the energy associated with the name Maura Murray felt as if it had been whitewashed, there still exists, almost as if you will, the negative of a photo. Even if the photo itself is never developed, guess what? There is still the negative of it. So essentially, post-cognitive energy reading is where I'm looking at the negative of a photo, but not the photo itself. So through this method of looking at the negative of the photo, if you will, I was able to see what had occurred on the night that Maura had disappeared. And it was shown to me that despite the police's assertion that her exact destination was not known, it in fact very much was known, at least to her. And she had an appointment at a secret facility. But perhaps calling it secret is a bit hyperbolic, because it was in fact more of a semi-secret location. Because it was not a secret building in the way that the ones in the Appalachian Mountains were shown to me as, but as in the building that she was going to was known to exist. However, what it was really used for isn't, because just by the looks of it on the outside, it appears to be a generic office building. But even though from the outside it looked like a generic office building, Maura very much knew why she was going there. And she was nervous. This is why she had stopped to get alcohol along the way, because, as alcohol is sometimes referred to, liquid courage. Now then you might be wondering, if she knew where she was going, but she had an accident, how did she get there, right? Well, the accident was in fact part of the plan of her disappearance, as in getting into the accident was orchestrated. It was, if you will, I'm going to borrow a literature term, it was a so-called red herring left behind to confuse people, because the fact that there was a car accident did add to the confusion surrounding the case, as well as more questions than answers. Because had she just vanished, and had she just disappeared without a trace, then people would really make the claim she wanted to disappear and not to have been found. But now, because there was a car accident and she had vanished from it, it introduces the element of potential foul play that would not exist otherwise without it. And also, it introduces further questions than answers, such as, did she just leave and wander off from the accident and then cross over because of hypothermia? Was she picked up by another motorist after the accident and then unalived? There are so many more options and various different elements of what could have happened to her, so much more confusion and a lot less clarity than had she in fact just vanished. So yes, Moira getting into the car accident was in fact very intentional, because without it, the case would just have appeared to have been an intentional missing person and somebody that did not want to be found. So to create more confusion, there was the element of the accident. It was planned. And then it was also planned that after the accident, she was going to get picked up by somebody else. And picked up she in fact was, and at which time it was shown to me that she was taken to this facility that she knew she was in fact going to be going to. And she was nervous and a little bit scared. And her emotions at the time I can in fact see, because I can almost feel the emotions roiling off of her body. However, if you want to know why she had gone there in the first place, that is not something I can tell you at this time. Because, again, without having an energetic resonance to connect to, as in without there being an energetic fingerprint connected to her name, motivation and things like that, as a post-cog reader, I cannot report on. However, emotions do exist, and they are left behind as an energetic residue because they are literally released from a person's body just as sweat is. This is why I can tell you how she felt at the time, but cannot tell you what it is that she had thought. She was nervous and a little scared, and what little alcohol that she had had along the way had since worn off. And the man that she sat next to in the car was so no nonsense that it did little to settle her nerves. Now, once they had arrived at this semi-secret facility, she was taken into rooms where they ran tests on her. Eye exams, blood tests, they took hair and saliva samples, an OBGYN examination, x-rays. So essentially think of it like a full body physical that one would have done when they go to the doctor. Now, after all of the tests were run on her, she was taken into a room that was completely round except for the floor. But as in, imagine a flat floor and then the walls are completely round. The ceiling is even completely round. So it's essentially a dome-shaped room. And the only flat surface of the room was the floor. And on the floor in the middle of the room was a chair. Now, the room was completely white. And once she had sat down in it, she was strapped to the chair. The door was closed, and then lights began flashing all around the room at various different intervals. So sometimes the front of the room, sometimes the back of the room, sometimes overhead, sometimes down by the floors. Sometimes it was different colors. Sometimes it was all of the colors flashing at one time. And if that's not disorienting enough, in addition to that, a sound like an MRI machine started playing. And then that sound, in conjunction with the lights flashing, had gone on for hours. Not 4 hours, as in the number 4, but as in it had gone on for many multiple amounts of hours. And yes, I can tell you that the short time that I was in the energy of that room, it was incredibly disorienting. Now, a few hours later, but I cannot tell you exactly how many, again, because of the disorientation that was caused by all of those lights and the sounds being played, the door was opened. Somebody went into the room to take her out, but Moira at this time was completely out of it. Her eyes were open, but so was her mouth. In fact, she looked like she was not alive, except for the fact that she had a pulse. So imagine eyes staring off into space, mouth completely opened, and no blinking either. So essentially, it was like the lights were on, but nobody was home. She was then taken into a different medical examiner's room where a brain scan was set up on her and various different tests were run. And after that, a needle was injected into her arm, and the connection I had to the events surrounding her energy was completely severed. As in, the energy of Maura Murray went offline. As in, her Wi-Fi router, if you will, was turned off. But again, I do not think that she was unalived at this time, because if she was, I would have been able to pick up on her soul's essence on the other side, of which there is nothing. So then that leaves two options for what I think happened to Maura Murray. She is either in a state of suspended animation, such as a medically induced coma, because I have seen this occur in the past when I have been asked to look into a celebrity's energy, and I have come across this similar state of suspended animation that was shown to me as being a coma. But the other option is that Maura Murray had her memory wiped and she was turned into somebody else. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging, because I think I know who Maura Murray was turned into, even if I don't definitively know why. Now, there is a very curious coincidence, although here on this channel, we don't believe in coincidences. But for argument's sake, there's a very curious coincidence of a governor of the state of Massachusetts named Maura Healey. And what do you know? Maura Healey looks almost completely identifiable, despite an age difference, to Maura Murray, but exact, like exact. So again, as an energy reader, one of my first recourses would always be to look into the name of a person. So I decide to look into the name Maura Healy. And for a person that's very much alive and is a public figure at that, Maura Healy's energy feels energetically like it's underwater. Now, not as if it has been energetically whitewashed or scrubbed clean the way the name Maura Murray felt to me, but more as if it's a soggy coat that does not fit another person, but it is put on them to conceal the identity of the person that's wearing it. But because the coat itself is so wet, it does not entirely fit the person that it's been put on, and therefore it also doesn't entirely keep the shape intended to conceal. And then when I try to connect to the energy of the person with the name Maura Healy, she just blinks at me, but there's no consciousness in the blink. But it's not because this person does not have consciousness, but it's because the person with the name Maura Healy doesn't connect to the name, so therefore she doesn't respond to it. Now I'm just going to remind you, this is on a soul level. This is not a conscious level. This is not like if somebody goes up to this governor named Maura Healy and they say, Governor Healy, it's not to say that she's not going to respond to them, because she will. Again, I'm going to remind you, this is energy. This is not 3-dimension. So on a soul level, the person associated to the name Maura Healy doesn't respond to the name. So essentially, the soul of the person in the body with the name Maura Healy doesn't know she's supposed to respond to that name, because on a soul level, it's not her name. So look at it like this. A person goes to the DMV to change their name on their driver's license after they get married. Now the DMV worker is calling their new last name, but the person is not yet responding to the name that has been called because it's still too new to them. But imagine they also are no longer responding to their old name either, because they've already legally changed their name, and changing it on their driver's license and on their passport is perhaps just a formality. So essentially, on a soul level, this soul of this person is living in limbo and is identityless. As in, the soul doesn't know who it was prior, because the energetic resonance of the name of who they were prior was completely washed away, and it was even eradicated, if you will. But it doesn't know who it is yet either, because the person's 3D memory was fractured prior to it taking up a new name and in fact becoming an entirely new person. So the soul doesn't know who it is or who it in fact ever was. So again, now that we've established that the association to the name Maura Murray has energetically been whitewashed, and the consciousness of the person associated to the name completely went offline. But also, when I connect to the energy of the person named Maura Healy, and I try to address her as such, she doesn't in fact know that she's Maura Healy, but again, on a soul level. So that again brings me back to the original two options that I had started with. Was the energy of Maura Murray put into some suspended animation state, such as a coma? Or is Maura Murray, in fact, Governor Maura Healey? So I'm going to share just a tiny bit of 3D information about Maura Healey. Maura Tracy Healey, who was born February 8, 1971, is an American lawyer and politician serving as the 73rd governor of Massachusetts since 2023. She is a member of the Democratic Party, and she served as the Massachusetts Attorney General from 2015 to 2023, and she was elected governor in 2022. Now, according to Governor Maura Healey's Wikipedia page, she has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Harvard University. And if you're like me and you hear that, maybe your spidey senses are going off, because I've previously looked into the elite universities and they are not what they appear to be, and not even a little bit. And if you want to learn more about that, I have linked some previous content of mine down below in which I have looked into it. Now, other things that are of note to Healey's Wikipedia page is that in 2014, she became the first openly lesbian woman elected Attorney General of a U.S. state, and the first openly LGBTQ person elected to statewide office in Massachusetts, as well as the first woman elected governor of Massachusetts. So I'm not saying anything other than the fact that maybe if somebody really wanted to push some sort of a LGBTQ agenda, maybe this is a convenient way of doing it. So this is where my conscious mind kicks back in. Because as I sometimes affectionately refer to myself, I am just the hand that holds the pen of the channeled information. And sometimes when I'm in a channeling session, I'm just in the flow and I just write down whatever comes in. And it's almost, if you will, as if my conscious mind has gone into the passenger seat of the car, and it's in fact the channeled information that's in the driver's seat. So sometimes when I'm channeling, my conscious mind is just kicking it in the passenger seat. And sometimes something will come in and it really piques my conscious mind's curiosity, and I kick out the channeled information and my conscious mind climbs back over into the driver's seat. This is very much the case of what had happened here. So my conscious 3D mind had kicked out the channeling, and now that my mind was once again in the so-called driver's seat, I start to wonder which of the two options is more likely. But in addition to which is more likely, why? As in, why keep Maura Murray in some sort of a suspended state of animation, such as a coma? So what purpose would that serve, and to whom? But then also I start to wonder, why have her become Maura Healey at all, especially when there's an age difference between the two of them? So I start to wonder, did the original Maura Healey cross over, but they had plans for her that simply no one else could carry out? Because everything that's been shown to me, that would indicate a high level of an irregularity. Because every politician, and yes, even those at the highest level, were shown to me as being completely interchangeable, as in they are all actors playing a role. But also look at it this way. Even actors that are playing a role, such as Broadway actors, they have understudies. So what about this particular case would call for a nearly decade younger doppelganger of a Moira Healy to be brought in and to play her role out on the world stage. And that got me thinking, maybe it's not about the role at all, but maybe having Maura Murray turn into Moira Healy serves some far darker and far more nefarious purpose. Like maybe this was all some sort of proof of concept that shows that our brains are malleable and our identities are interchangeable. And maybe this is some sort of a long-term proof of concept to see just how long exactly an implanted person with an implanted identity and an implanted memory could in fact hold. Because as I have shared with you guys, the first MK Ultra test pilot case was Marilyn Monroe, a video which has been also linked down below. But imagine since then just how further advanced the mind control techniques are. But also, it's not just the celebrities that have had it done on them, because to some degree, we all have had it done on us as well. Have you ever tried to wake a truly sleeping person up? And I'm not talking about sleeping in bed, but as in somebody that is so deeply asleep, it's as if their mind is in fact comatose? Well, if you have, then you know just how hard it can be because the cognitive dissonance is so deep. And for that person to start to question one belief could call into question too many other ones, and then that person's reality just comes crumbling down. But outside of society at large and celebrities, many wealthy CEOs, executives, or even their wives have been under MK Ultra mind control, and many of them, in fact, even have had alters or alternate personalities implanted inside of them. This was shown to me to be the case with JonBenet Ramsey's mother, Patsy Ramsey. And if you want to learn more about that, there is also a video linked below. But then outside of all of this talk about MK Ultra mind control, I started to think that maybe, just maybe, this is some next level fucked up punishment to a club member or a Masonic family. Like maybe Moira's father is a Freemason and he no longer wants to play by the rules, so they fry his daughter's memory, give that daughter a prominent position in the same state she goes missing in, and then her father sees this person and knows it's his Moira, but he can never approach her, he can never talk to her, he can never hug her again, and he can only love her from afar, all while pretending to search for a daughter he can very publicly see, or pretend to mourn a daughter who's very much alive and well. Because how diabolical would that be for the Masons to do? Because when a group or an organization worships Satan, this level diabolical is just another Monday morning. But now that I've shared my energetic assessment of the name Maura Murray as well as Moira Healy, you tell me, what do you think happened to Maura Murray? Do you think it's any of my theories or something else? Be sure to tell me and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. So this concludes the energy reading into Maura Murray. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this wild reading. perhaps found it to be insightful or thought-provoking. This is also where I remind you to take what resonates, leave the rest behind, and as always, and until next time, don't join the club and stay in the high vibration.